Welcome to Emmecast. This is the podcast where we talk to moms, we talk to our listeners, we talk to each other about all different kinds of things that involve motherhood, giving birth, having babies, the problems, the joys, everything. This week's episode is a little different, as you might have guessed. This is in English, and my guest today is Lauren, who's a good friend, also a mom of a 1.5-year-old. And we're going to talk about what it's like to be a foreigner in Estonia, having a baby in Estonia, what are the differences between the US and Estonia in regards to having kids and babies and families and all of that. Hi, Lauren.
Hello. Hi, Mari.
So let's start with just you. Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you in Estonia?
Nii. So I am Lauren. I moved to Estonia almost 7 years ago. I moved here because I have family roots. Like, my dad's side is Estonian, and I have 2 older brothers. One brother moved here to experience something new. The other one followed, and I followed a few years after that, and we've been living here quite some time. We all now have families here, and are just living the life. I'm from originally Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the east coast of the United States of America. That's where I grew up. I don't know what else you want to know. I moved to Estonia just because, like, my brother got real drunk one Christmas and called me and screamed at me all the reasons why I needed to move out of our little town in Pennsylvania and come experience life in Europe. So I agreed to do it for 1 year, and 6 years later, here I am, married with a 19-month-old at this point, and life couldn't be sweeter.
Nice. So you are married to an Estonian, right?
That's right, yep.
Yeah.
His name is Jürgen.
Nice.
Did not get permission to use his name, but there it is.
Might have to get him to sign a waiver later.
Yeah. Yep, we met actually through the place where we work, and that's it. We met there, summer days, and then the rest is history.
Oh, the Estonian company summer days. Magical places.
They really are.
Yeah. So, having babies in Estonia, you got pregnant here, you gave birth here, you at that point and still don't really speak Estonian. So, tell me about, you found out you're pregnant and needing to go to a doctor. Like, what was it like for a person who doesn't speak Estonian to go through something that's so important, all the medical stuff and everything you needed to do?
I gotta say, it was pretty nerve-wracking, mostly because it bothers me a lot that I don't speak as much Estonian as I would like to after living here for almost 7 years. I am very kind of lucky in that regard that I am married to an Estonian. The father is Estonian. So it's, when I made my first appointment, I asked some of my friends, my sister-in-law, for example, for recommendations on midwives who speak English. Emailed this midwife specifically in English and said, do you have an available spot for me? I've heard that you speak English, that you have recommended. There it is. And I remember whenever I first went for the appointment after the midwife had said that, yes, come on this date to verify your pregnancy. I went there with my husband, and just, we were very confused at first of what to do, and just the going around and like, Jürgen, you have to ask, you have to go up to these nurses and find out what's happening. And he's just like, all I know to ask is, you're pregnant for an appointment. Are they going to understand that that's enough? You know, what kind of information do they need from you? What kind of information can you give them? And just, it was very nerve-wracking to just at first go in and know that going to a hospital specifically can sometimes be like Estonian, Russian for sure, English, you got 20 to 30% chance that they understand anything that you've said. So that was pretty much it at first. It was quite nerve-wracking. But once I met my midwife, everything was fine. Her English was great, and she really helped me. Very reassuring.
So Jürgen had quite a different experience than other dads in Estonia do. He was quite involved in the whole nitty-gritty of pregnancy and all the appointments and all the tests and everything.
Oh yeah, he had to translate all the websites for me. He had the things that came in for like my maternity leave, for example. He had to be involved in almost making all of my appointments, helping me register with the haigekassa whenever I needed to get the maternity leave pay, because that website, sometimes the English worked, sometimes half of it was still in Estonian. I didn't know. And yeah, he ended up going to a lot of the appointments with me in case if I did have questions and the nurses didn't speak English or not enough to get the point across. Towards the end of my pregnancy, then he didn't have to go because I knew exactly who I was going to see. Maybe I'd already seen this doctor before. The midwife obviously spoke English, but at first it didn't matter. He had to come with me.
So before you got pregnant, I imagine you did some research about what it's like to be pregnant or a new mom in Estonia, and all the money and the maternity leaves and paternity leaves and all of that. Did you like the system? Did you like all the perks that you got and all the, everything about it? Because from what I hear, it's very different in the States.
Yeah, fortunately, I had you specifically to ask a lot of my questions since we got pregnant around the same time. So that was...
Yeah, I should clarify that we're really good friends. So
yeah, and so you helped me a lot in that regard, in finding out how do I get the money for haigekassa and the maternity leave and clarifications on that. So if you're listening to this as a foreigner in Estonia, find some Estonian friends who have the time, who can help you translate some of these things, because it can be rather confusing. Like just trying to find information on maternity leave. Mari, you and I were just talking about this a few minutes ago, that I am trying to see that there have been changes in the maternity leave law, or what has happened, and I can't find any information in English. It is very difficult to try and find exactly what do I get for a second child, maybe. What are the new laws? This kind of information is real difficult. But when it comes to the actual system itself, it's amazing. The fact that, I didn't have a child in America. So I had to ask a couple of friends and some Facebook groups and say, can I have your examples on this? And basically here in Estonia, it's pretty straightforward. You're assigned a midwife, you go see that midwife, you talk with them throughout your pregnancy. Here you have the option of hiring a private midwife for delivery, which I totally did. And you get the money as like a monthly salary, straightforward. Whereas in the States, it is highly dependent on what kind of insurance that you have. If you are military or have government insurance, you're okay. You could pay between a couple $100 to a couple $1,000, depending, or you could not have any insurance and end up filing for bankruptcy because you don't have the $45,000 to pay for giving birth to your child.
$45,000?
It depends, yeah, because it depends on the hospital. If you don't have any insurance whatsoever, how difficult was it? Did you need to have a C-section? Was it a planned C-section? Was there an emergency? What kind of room did you stay in after the birth? Did your child need specific kind of care afterwards? All of these things they're not forgiven if you don't have insurance. Things that are totally uncontrollable, they're not forgiven. So if you don't have insurance in America, then you have to pay for these things. Or even if you just have a regular birth and just you don't have insurance, then you don't know. It could go it could still be $13,000.
That sounds insane.
It really is, and it's just trying to figure out that if I give birth in a hospital, am I going to have to give up my car, my way of getting to work, to pay for the bills of having a child? Is just, it's unfathomable to me now, after living here for so many years and having the experience I've had in Estonia, of it just being, my most difficult part was that I don't speak the language here. If that's the worst thing I've had to put up with, then I've had it really, really lucky, very easy compared to some other people in the States, of trying to just figure out if they can do it, if it's how you have to find a specific hospital that will take your specific insurance. If they don't, then you have to pay more out of pocket. Whereas here, my only expenses were, like I mentioned before, I hired the private midwife. I hired the midwife I saw throughout my pregnancy to deliver my baby, because I wanted her. She spoke English. She was straightforward. She'd tell me what I needed to do, what I was doing wrong, and that's what I knew I needed. And we paid extra to have the family room, a private family room in the hospital. And we ended up having to stay there for 3 nights because my son needed some extra blood work. And that was it. 600 euros, and we were done.
Yeah, and most of that is the midwife, I think.
It's 500 euros for the midwife, yeah. So, I mean, totally worth it in my book, but I know that's not for everybody. But most of my friends that I've talked to who have on their second child, like their first child, they didn't have a private midwife. The second child, they did. That was something that they had wished they had done the first time, and the second time they're like, yep, gonna hire somebody specifically for me to help with any complications.
See, what I've always thought about the private midwife, I mean, obviously I'm Estonian and I speak the language and it's fine, but I spent, I think, 24 hours altogether in the delivery room.
Yeah.
It took 17 hours for the dude to actually enter this world. But what I always thought was, like, I kind of liked not having somebody in there all the time. Like, I was having conversations with my husband, I was taking a nap. I just always thought that I'd be, I don't know, uncomfortable to have somebody always there.
She didn't stay in the room the whole time.
No?
Because, like, for example, I had been in labor for about 14 hours, I think, by the time that I finally went to the hospital. And she met me on the labor ward. She took me to the room, asked me how I was doing, helped Jürgen and I get kind of set up. She told me, put this gown on, take everything off. And I even asked her, like, do I have to take my underwear off? And she's like, of course you have to take your underwear off. Like, when's your baby gonna come out? But I was just so tired. I was so tired after being in labor for so many hours. And, like, I was having contractions every 3 minutes. At that point, I was exhausted. So she was just like, okay, here's the laughing gas. I'm going to leave you guys alone. And she left us alone until I had Jürgen go and get her because the laughing gas made me throw up.
Yeah, same.
So not recommended in my book. And I had the epidural. She came in to tell me about the epidural and then left again. Of course, my husband had to leave as well. And then she basically left until after I got the epidural. I slept for a little bit. And she had told Jürgen and me as well, but, you know, I was slightly out of it. And she said that, like, when I feel the need to push, then Jürgen is to push this button and she'll come back. And then she was in and out of the ward based on how much I was pushing and this and that. So she was not in the room with us the whole time. She didn't just sit there and just twiddle her fingers and watch me be in labor.
That's what I thought happened, you know? Okay, that makes more sense. No,
it was just that when my room button is called, she is the only one to go in there. She is meant there for me. So that was the whole thing about having the private midwife. So that was, for me, great. It was perfect.
So you stayed in the family room for 3 nights, you said.
Yeah.
And I assume Jürgen was there with you the whole time?
Yes.
So he took over again, right?
Yeah. because it was pre-corona, so he could actually stay in the room with me for the whole time. So he did go to like the store, to the pharmacy, to get certain things. One thing I did not know was that I needed to bring my own pads. Don't know how I missed that memo, but he had to go out and go get me some more pads because I just gave birth. I needed more.
Yeah.
And that was a miscommunication. But I was very grateful that he was there because I had a lot of trouble standing up afterwards.
Yeah. So then you come home with the baby.
Yes.
How has it been being a bilingual family and raising a child in Estonia? And
you know what? This is actually really fun for me but also very devastating. And I'll explain why. Because the mother tongue is English. That's the tongue that his mother speaks.
Mm-hmm.
And yet my child still speaks more Estonian than English. So he does say in English, "What's that? Bye-bye." He said the word cheese the other day, which I was real excited about. He does say a few other things, but he started going, "Mise, mise." And then we were asking, we had a book just before bedtime, just today. Where's the bananas? Say. It's this. Where is it? This. Just say. And I was like, wait, what's happening here? I speak to him like all the time in English, and yet Estonian is the language that he's picked up the fastest. At least the one that he wants to communicate with the most, which is obviously a very good thing since we live in Estonia. This is where he's going to be raised. It's where he's going to go to school. He's going to go to an Estonian school. But I can't have a conversation with my own kid.
But this is an opportunity, Lauren. You can actually pick it up faster now.
I have learned so much more, understanding at least, listening to Estonian, thanks to my husband constantly repeating himself in a very slow tone, constantly talking with our son. And just, for me, that it helps a lot. I've been able to learn a lot more that way. Speaking, not so much. Understanding, yes.
Yeah. So what's been difficult for you, like as a mom in Estonia?
As a mom in Estonia, for me, I guess the hardest thing is just I get very nervous about trying to handle situations that normally I would like to handle, calling for doctor's appointments. My son's currently not in kindergarten, something that I wish I could take upon myself, or before I had left my maternity leave, been able to research more, call the kindergartens, talk with them, email them, these sorts of things. But there's no guarantee that the kindergarten is going to understand English, which is totally understandable. And I just feel totally helpless in that regard, that I won't be able to communicate with the teachers, even on a basic level, because, again, I can't speak it. I can understand some, but I can't speak the language. And trying to do these professional-esque sort of things of registering for kindergarten, talking with kindergartens, calling the doctor's office, these sorts of things. I know that my doctor, the receptionist, does speak English, but her English isn't great. It's enough to, what's your name, what are you here for, that sort of thing. So I'm not so afraid whenever I go there, but to call, I don't know if she's going to be the one to pick up. Is she the one on duty that day? So for me, it is the communication really is the hardest part of handling these kinds of situations for my son.
So for anyone who is a foreigner in Estonia listening to this right now, do you remember and can you break down the whole maternity leave money situation? Like what is it? If you don't know, I can fill it in.
You may have to, because I'm technically an Estonian. So I don't know that there are any foreign... No, actually, if I think about it, because we have a friend who's a foreigner, and she got the same benefits as all of us, but she's also married to an Estonian. So I know for me the biggest concern was I didn't have my bank account in Haigekassa. And trying to find the link to put my bank account in, because I remember that when I had started my maternity leave, they're supposed to pay you, is it the bulk pay? So like I went on maternity leave 30 days before my due date, and they're supposed to pay you the certain, is it like the bulk pay, the 4 months that you're technically on sick leave? Okay, and I remember that I was reaching my 30-day mark, and I'm like, how come I haven't received this yet? So I was talking with one of my other mom friends, and she goes, oh, my mom works for Haigekassa. Let me just ask her to see if she's busy, and she'll check real quick to see what could be the issue. So she took my information, she checked, came back to me and said, your bank account's not in there. You need to go to this website. And I was like, nowhere was I able to find in any of the portals in Haigekassa this link. And I actually recently had to switch banks while I was still on maternity leave, and trying to find that link again, it took me over a month of checking, because I had to wait to see if the salary came in. Did it not? Okay, no. I had to keep my old bank account open longer, specifically to make sure that it had switched and it wasn't correct. Finally, by the time I found it, it was like I had like a month left of Haigekassa, and that was the part that could have been the easiest. If there was somewhere in some information, like whether it be from the company's HR, from the hospital, any of the information that you get going on maternity leave, like make sure, like information here, and just have, you need to have your bank account in there, otherwise you're not going to get paid. And that's that.
Yeah.
So,
just to break this down, the system in Estonia, you get to go on this is a direct translation. I'm not sure what it's called actually in English, but it's your pregnancy and giving birth vacation, which it definitely is not. But you get...
I wish.
Yeah, seriously. You get 140 days of that. You can start if you're working, you can go on that leave at 70 days before your due date. The latest that is good to go on that leave is 30 days before, like Lauren did. If you stay at work longer, which, why would you?
It's not recommended.
Yeah, because it then starts deducting the days that you will get paid for a year and a half after the baby's born.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's why most moms opt for the 30 days before, because technically that will give you the most amount of money, because your mama pay starts after the 140 days is up, regardless of how old your baby is by then or when were they born. That doesn't matter. And then your maternity leave is paid for 435 days. After that, you get nothing. So it's 100% to a 0% of your pay. The way that pay is calculated is a little complicated. It is your baby's conceived date, and then the 12 months before that. They take the average pay of that 12 months and then pay that. So if your baby was born in, say, September, because it's easy to calculate, baby was born in September, they take off 40 weeks, then they get a date of when your baby was conceived. Whether or not it's true, that doesn't matter. If your baby was a preemie, if they went over, it doesn't matter. They take the birth date, take 40 weeks of that, and then the 12 months before that, they take your average pay, and you get that for 435 days.
Interesting.
I know. It used to be the previous calendar year to when your baby was born, which was a hell of a lot easier to plan for.
Is this what they just changed it to? Did they just change that before we had our babies?
Yes, so our baby's pay was calculated with the new system, but it was changed like a couple of months before the babies were born.
Yeah. Because I remember that they went through that whole change. Because I remember that we had just missed the cutoff for fathers getting the 30 days of paternity leave instead of the 2 weeks, the 10 days. But
so yeah, that's another thing that's with the new law. The dads can now stay home for 30 days, which can be split up anytime between the baby's expected due date and until they are 3 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. And also your employer, dear listener, is required to keep your job for 3 years. So if you have the finances, if you can stay home, if you want to stay home with your baby, you can return to work, to your old position or equivalent in both responsibilities and pay up until your baby turns 3 years old.
Now, maybe this is something that has also changed since I had first started looking into maternity leave and is now. They have to hold your position or equivalent for a year and a half, or if you want to extend your maternity leave to 3 years, it could be any position. Did that change to it must be your position for the 3 years or any position after a year and a half?
From what I know, it is your position up to 3 years.
Okay.
And also something that's now on Lauren's and also my radar, if your second baby is born before your first one turns 3 years old, you will get the same mama pay if you haven't worked in between your children that you got with your first child. You will get the larger one. So if you worked in between, got more money, then you will get the money calculated for the new baby's dates. If not, if you didn't work, if you stayed home, you will get the same mama pay that you got with your first child. Also, your employer is now required to keep your job until your youngest one turns 3, if you have them with less of an age gap than 3 years old.
And if you have your second child after your first is 3 years old, from what I understand, it's now minimum wage?
Yes, if you haven't worked in between.
If you haven't worked in between, okay.
Yeah, because you can return to work and still get mama's pay. So basically doubling your income, but how could you leave a little peanut like that at home?
I know.
Which I'm the one to talk. I went back to work when my son was 70 days old. Yeah. But you can get both mama pay and get paid from your job as well.
Yeah, that was actually a nice bonus for me because I was asked to come back to work 2.5 weeks before my maternity leave technically ended. So for me, that was a nice little bonus of I got, an extra half a salary for maternity leave money plus half my work salary plus my taxes. So that was very nice. That was a very nice month.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole financial situation with having babies is definitely complicated, definitely even scary at times. Like, how do I get it? What do I do? In Estonia, it is pretty straightforward. You don't really have to, as long as your bank account is in Haigekassa, yes. You don't really have to do much else. You have to register your baby's birth, you have to notify your employer, and everything else, all the information you can get from your midwife or your doctor who you are seeing. Lauren, which hospital did you go to give birth?
I went to ITK, the Ida Tallinna Kesklina. No, Keskaigla.
Keskaigla. Yeah.
I should know. But yes, I went to ITK.
Were you happy with the service you were provided?
I was. Yes. I wasn't super happy with after I had the baby. Only because the nurses, well, rightfully so, only cared about the baby. But it was I had so many stitches afterwards that I really enjoyed those ice packs that they kept giving.
Yeah.
And I, kept asking Jürgen, go get me another ice pack, go get me another ice pack. And it was just, which is, of course, not something I expected the nurses to give. But even when they did come in to check on my son, never did they ask how I was doing, because I wanted to ask a couple of questions, but, I wasn't sure if they spoke English. I know that there was one nurse who came in, and Jürgen was like, what was the question that you wanted to ask the nurse? So I asked him in English, and the nurse clearly understood, because didn't hesitate, but turned around and turned to Jürgen in Estonian and said the answer, instead of attempting to say it in English to me, which for me at the time, it was frustrating because I was tired. I wanted my answer. I don't remember what the question was. But it was just something, it wasn't something big, but it was something that she probably could have communicated. She looked like she was about my age. And I kind of wish that I had been cared about at all afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I can't complain so much about my experience in the hospital. Bring snacks, because hospital food is a universal thing in the sense that it is meant to just keep you alive. But I gotta say, the meal that I had after I gave birth was the most delicious meal I've ever had. 20 hours of active labor, yeah.
Yeah, so I was also in Ithaca, and I had to go in a week before my due date for an ultrasound, and the baby measured too big, so they called me back the next morning to come in and be induced. That was a lot of fun. My son did not want to be born at all. I spent a week in the hospital with drinking a thing that was supposed to induce labor. It did nothing. The labor signs, the KTG, it's in Estonian. I don't know what it's in English. The machine that they hook up to monitor if you're contracting or not. It was, the line was so flat that it didn't do anything. The baby was not coming out, and I had to survive on hospital food for a week, where the last meal of the day is at 5. Yep. At 5. That's lunchtime.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I also had my husband bringing me all kinds of goodies every day, because pre-labor ward does not allow visitors outside of the visiting hours.
Oh.
So he only came by for like an hour, maybe 2 every day. That was fun.
Yeah.
So yes, snacks, absolutely. But specifically to Ithaca, there is a pizza joint right across the street. There's a couple of cafes.
There's a sushi place now.
Yeah?
Yeah, very close by. There's this shawarma. I live in the area of Ithaca, so I know it very well. And yeah, some nice cafes. And I gotta say this story real quick. After I was... I was doing the skin to skin with my son after all the pushing and everything. My midwife left to go, I think, register things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I asked Jürgen, I was like, Jürgen, get me something from the suitcase. Get me a snack. I'm so hungry. Because I ate in 24 hours. The only thing I'd eaten was half an apple, because that was all I had energy to eat.
Yeah.
So I was starving. And he was like, what do you want? I'm like, get me a Snickers. I'm eating the Snickers. My newborn is laying on my chest. I'm eating my Snickers. And the midwife walks into the delivery room and she goes, you will get a proper meal whenever you are in your room. And I was just like, she shamed me for eating a Snickers.
Oh no.
And I felt so bad. I pulled the wrapper back up and handed it to her. And I said, put it back in the suitcase, please.
Mom shame is real.
I think she was just like, you went through all that and you're going to put this poison in your body. Yeah. Are you serious? Yeah. A Snickers.
But seriously, like having a McDonald's meal or something right after birth would have been heaven.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Hesburger would have been great.
I know. Instead of the cold porridge that I was served the morning after the baby was born. Because he was born, I mean, my baby was born at 5:50 in the morning. We got to stay in the delivery room for, I think, 2 hours. And breakfast was served right as we were, like, getting ready to go back to our room.
Mm-hmm.
It was cold. It was nasty. It was tasteless. But I had been in that room for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't care. Give me.
Yep.
Handed the baby to his dad and just devoured that porridge. Would have loved a burger.
Yeah.
But you know.
I had borscht, which I normally don't like.
Yeah.
With sour cream. It was all cold and a hard roll. And I ate all of it. Even all the butter. All of it was gone.
Yeah, I know. Hospitals. So if you could change something in Estonia, being a mom, what would you want to be different?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is something that it's the same kind of problem in the States, in the UK, and a lot of other places, is I wish that private daycare wasn't so expensive. Based on my issues right now with kindergarten. My son is not in a kindergarten because there's no space for him in a kindergarten. And I, unfortunately, don't have the almost 600 euros a month to put my child in a private daycare. If I wanted him to go full-time to a nearby private daycare, so 5 days a week, for 8 hours, with all the meals included, I'm looking at 550 euros a month.
Jesus.
And the government does cover up to about 180 euros of that, because that's how much the government basically provides for the public ones, for the public kindergartens. So right now, I don't really have a choice but to leave my son at home with me and my husband. Fortunately, we're both working from home, but the kindergarten situation, in particular in Tallinn, because I know that in the rest of the country it's not such a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, move here, be my neighbor. You know, pay 100 euros, and you know.
Yeah, because I live in a city, like I said, near the hospital, so as city center as I can get without being in Old Town, and all the kindergartens are full. The closest one to me, we are in the 100th spot for. And the very first one that I signed up for, we're still in the 16th spot for. And we signed up for that a week after my son was born.
Yeah.
So it's been 19 months since we signed up for that kindergarten, and still there's no space for him. And I was talking with a friend of mine who's a kindergarten teacher, and she said that she wasn't entirely sure, but she thinks that because my son was born in the beginning of September, or at any point in September, they kind of calculate the lists of when they turn a year and a half or 2 years, and September babies get kind of put at the bottom, because, for example, August babies, they get put towards the top because that's when school season starts. So that's when they're looking into the age group of this and that. But somehow September, because it's right there, like at the end of September, if the child is 6 or 7, that's when they start first grade. And they kind of base kindergartens off the same kind of calculations. So she was saying that it's very possible that because he was born in September, that it seems as if he's on the bottom of the list, that he wasn't. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I've just rambled on for a few minutes, but somehow she made it make sense that he was kind of at the lowest, like further down on the list of priority for the kindergarten based on his date of birth.
Yeah, so the problem there is, I think I know what they were talking about, because the cutoff for going to school is you have to be 7, or the child has to be 7 by October 1st to start first grade that year. Now, if your baby's born in September, they are the youngest ones.
Yes, that's it.
To go to school that year, which means that they need to prioritize kids who are older because they have to start school that year, whereas your child is sort of on the borderline of like going to school now or a year from now.
That's it. That was it.
Yeah, so that's the gist of the Estonian school system. But also Tallinn is full of people, is full of babies.
Yeah. And
everybody needs to work, so yeah.
One of the problems also with kindergartens that my husband has talked about a couple of times is that anyone can sign up for a kindergarten anywhere in the city. Mm-hmm. It's not based on where you live like the regular schools are. Mm-hmm. So first grade on generally is based on what's the closest one. That's the one that you're automatically registered to unless you specifically choose a different school. Mm-hmm. With kindergartens, anyone from anywhere in the city can choose which kindergarten they want their child to go to. Mm-hmm. So whether it's close to your office, close to your home, or somewhere in the middle of yours or in your significant other's offices. So right now, currently, I live extremely close to a kindergarten, and I would love for him to be prioritized to get into this kindergarten, but it's we've emailed them, explained our situation, and they said that they'll get back to us if hopefully by June to let us know if they can make an exception based on proximity. Mm-hmm. To where we live, but at the same time, it's anybody can sign up for this school, regardless of where in the city they live. So that also causes an issue of who how they not calculate, but how they get the lists made. Something. I lost my train of thought. I'm super sorry.
No, that's fine. It's it totally makes sense, and since it could also be that the one that is closest to you is also a very popular daycare with everybody working at the hospital, which is right near you as well. So they might just they might live in Mustamäe or wherever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is part of the issue, I would say, because I think your initial question was what do I find is the biggest struggle as a...
Yeah, what would you change, like with the whole kid thing?
Yeah, it would be the kindergartens, because based on some of the stories that I've been told or read from others in America, I had it really easy here, and the general fact that I was paid to go onto maternity leave for a year and a half blows the minds of people in America. They don't get it. They're like, so you get to be off work for 18 months and they have to hold your job? Yes. But you're not getting any money this time? No, I'm getting my full salary for those 18 months. I don't understand what that means. Like, no, I'm getting paid for 18 months because I had a baby. If you talk to any Americans about it, that you can see the confusion as they're trying to connect the wires in their brain. It just doesn't make any sense, because one company I worked for in America was, I talked with a lady who's about to give birth. Her due date was in 2 weeks. She was working her last shift, or one of her last shifts. She had like maybe a week left. So she had to work almost up until her due date, and she got 6 weeks unpaid, but she got her job back.
That sounds insane. It sounds horrible.
And then you have to put your newborn into daycare. Mm-hmm. And it just, for me, for most moms, I'm sure, it's the most heartbreaking thing that you don't want to put your newborn in daycare. And no part of the American system is well enough or cares enough even in general about these things. And for me, it's really heartbreaking to know that if I were in America in the same situation, that I would have had to give up any sorts of career. Yeah. Because there's no way that I personally would have been able to. As much as I have a very strong work ethic, I very much enjoy my work. I like to be at work. I wouldn't be able to leave my son
No.
at a daycare from that age.
No.
There's no way I could have done it.
I mean, even now, they're almost 2. And
Mhm.
even now, it's like, we have to put them in daycare because they will destroy the house while we work.
Yes.
But it's still...
I mean, I can't get any work done because anytime I'm trying, I have my hand on my mouse, and the next thing I know, my pinky is being pulled backwards, and my kid is making noises at me because he wants to lead me to the fridge because he wants me to get the strawberries out of the fridge for him.
Of course. It's bananas in our household, but yeah, same.
No, he's not interested in bananas at all anymore. It's not all the things that he used to eat. Nope.
No.
Now it's just strawberries.
I'm sure they could live off them. I mean,
they'd sure like to.
Yeah.
You want to get children to calm down? Give them strawberries. You want kids to just sit down and be quiet for 5 minutes? Just give them a bucket of strawberries, and they will.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned that your brothers are also in Estonia. Well, I, of course, know this. Our listeners do not. So, what it's like, tell me about your mom. She's in the States.
Yes.
So, how is she handling the whole... everybody being in Estonia, grandkids and all?
It's really hard for her because my mom has always wanted to be a grandmother. You know, ever since we were adults, she was like, she's like, you can have grandchildren, you can get married. I remember she was like, you don't even have to be married to have children. It's okay. It's all right. If you want to have children, then do it. Just as long as you're happy.
Yeah.
But of course, that was all before I moved here. And of course, she wanted me to be happy and have children here as well. But for her, it is just every time that we use Signal to talk with each other. So anytime that we use Signal to video call, it's always, I can just see just how much she just wants to hold my son. And my brother has, him and his wife have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old girl and a boy. And anytime that she talks, she's just, oh, it's just so big. They're just so big. Oh, the little boy has such big cheeks. I just want to pinch his cheeks and it is hard. It's really hard. And even for me, because right now, how I would benefit greatly from having grandma here.
Yeah.
And she would benefit from being here. Just she wants to be with her grandchildren so much. And we always, say, oh, thank goodness we live in the time of technology where we can use video calls to see each other and talk with each other, hear our voices, and so that my son doesn't forget his Mimi's face. We call her Mimi. She's not grandma, she's Mimi. And and I want my mom here as well. Her advice would have been great during my pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved for her to have been able to feel my son moving around in my stomach. She never got that chance. Because she was she was here when I had just gotten pregnant, way before I had even known I was pregnant. She was here.
Oh.
And it was a few weeks after she had left to go back to the States that I told her. And then she came here 2 weeks after my son was born. So wasn't here for my whole pregnancy. My sister-in-law's pregnancies, wasn't here for those. And just, I know I've been slowly trying to convince her to move here. It's working.
Yeah.
The fact that more and more grandchildren keep popping up. It's been working. But she, of course, has her obligation. She has a husband. Her husband has his children from a previous marriage who have their own children. So she's got, her step-grandchildren there.
Mm-hmm.
And she has her friends and the rest of her family there as well. But I have a feeling that if the opportunity arises, she will move here, even though she would desperately love to move to Florida.
Yeah.
And Florida and Estonia can't be more different than each other.
No. I remember you mentioning how much your mom hates anything cold, and I'm like,
oh my god.
All her children and grandbabies are in Estonia. Good luck with that, Mimi.
Exactly. She was here, her and my stepdad were here for Christmas. And we actually had a proper winter this year. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Lots of snow, minus 20 degrees. And oh my gosh, my mom was miserable. She's like, do I have to go outside? Oh my God, do I have to put my coat on? But we're working through it. I'm trying to convince her. She got her last vaccine for COVID.
Yes.
So she should be able to travel coming up soon. So I'm trying to convince her to come visit for the summer.
Yeah.
When it'll still be freezing for her, but hot for the rest of us.
Yes. So you guys are using technology on a regular basis to keep in touch and keep everybody connected. And
I send her pictures and messages at least every other day, if not every day. And we video call every other week at minimum as well. So that works. It works for us because we know that that's our only option.
Yeah.
We can't all fly out to the States whenever we want to. It's way easier for her to come here instead of lugging for 7 of us, if you include the parents, the grandchildren, and it's a lot. And we finally got my dad on Signal, so he can finally get daily updates, because normally he would just get a once a month update from me by email. And now he gets almost daily updates with my mom. So technology is great. I recommend Signal. Secure, not sponsored. Hashtag.
Spoken like a true podcaster.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I know. Same. Can't get enough of that true crime.
Nope. We'll talk about that on another thing.
Oh yeah, we will.
I watched a few things this week.
Yeah. Okay, we are coming up on an hour here. I want to thank you, Lauren, for taking the time to sit down with me.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
Of course. I mean, we would have anyways. Now we just get to put it up on the internet.
Oh, yay. Be up on the internet.
We'll be famous in no time.
Yes.
I want to thank you, dear listener, for bearing with us for this special English edition of Emmecast. And if you have any questions, if you have any other topics that you want me and Lauren to talk about, we might sit down and do another one. Just
happy to do so.
Absolutely. Might make it a regular thing. So just send Emmecast your questions, your topic suggestions, your stories. We want to spread the stories wide and give all the moms information and some support. Just so everybody knows that they're not alone. Whatever you feel, whatever you are thinking about regarding babies, or you as a mom or a family or in your partnership or whatever, that's what we are trying to do here. Mostly this is in Estonian, but
hey, if the English ones work for you guys and you want the gory details, I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Lauren.
Thank you, Mari.
Thank you, listeners. And I will talk at everybody again next week.
Bye.
Bye.